Welcome to the Guelph Real Estate Report podcast with your host and Guelph Realtor, Ryan Waller. This podcast is designed to provide information for those buying and selling homes in the Guelph area to make the process more informative, fun, and a little less stressful. Now, on with the show.
Hey everyone, welcome back to episode 14 of the Guelph Real Estate Report podcast. My name is Ryan Waller and I work in the Guelph real estate market with my wife, Beth. Today we're going to take a look at the period of May 1st to May 10th to get an idea of how the busiest month in Guelph real estate is starting off. The market from January until April is a slow build, and if you can visualize it, it's almost like an arc upwards, and it starts off pretty slow with low transaction volume in January, and February is a little bit better than January. March is a little bit better than February, and April is better than March. As we get into May and June, it hits the peak and levels off. And then after June, starting in July, it typically begins a downward trend into Christmas. And of course, there are blips here and there, anomalies here and there that change that trajectory, but generally it follows that path where we hit a peak in May, June before it comes down again. Leading into May, we obviously just finished April, which was the start of the Guelph real estate spring market. It was a bit disappointing, and although April was the biggest volume month so far this year, it was still below previous April sales volumes. In fact, besides April of COVID, which was the first full month during the pandemic, April 2025 was the lowest volume month we've seen in a long time. And low volume, as I've said previously, doesn't necessarily mean low prices. Low volume means that buyers and sellers weren't coming together on transactions. And that has been the story with the real estate market this year. If you had to sum up Guelph real estate, it's been generally low volume. And it is because, if you think about it, buyers are reading the headlines, buyers are nervous. With all the tariff talk, there were many buyers thinking that now isn't the time to make a move because maybe their job is at risk. Maybe there's uncertainty in the economy. And as a result, buyers sat on the sidelines and waited for things to happen, or they waited until what they perceived to be a good deal on a property that maybe they were looking at. Sellers, on the other hand, didn't want to hear anything about that news and continued to list their houses at what they thought were suitable prices. And buyers didn't agree. And so the gap between buyers and sellers widened, and there was less activity that happened as a whole. And obviously with less activity, less people buying, less people selling at the prices that they wanted, nothing happened. And it happened again in April. Sales volume, as mentioned, were down. They were just over 5 sales per day, which for April is a light number. That is the overall average for the full year. But usually April, May, and June, which make up about 35 to 40% of the total annual sales, see a larger number than 5. So it was a disappointment for sure. But it just goes on to tell the story of cautious buyers, stubborn sellers. When you get into May, the first 10 days of May have put us at about 6 sales per day on average. If you look back at previous Mays, you'll see that this number is in line with what you'd expect to see in a typical May. Last year was 6.1 sales per day. We hovered in the 6s for a number of years, with the exception, I think, of 2021 that was at 9 per day. 6 sales per day in the month of May is an okay month. It is nothing unusual. There's no big volume, but what we are seeing in May is a different pattern than we've seen in previous months. Previous months, we've been trending below historical numbers, and this May, we're seeing it at the historical numbers. So there has been a little bit of an improvement. It makes sense. Interest rates have been coming down. The news has settled a little bit on these trade wars, and the economy is getting to be a little more stable, although we are starting to see some cracks in Southern Ontario in the automotive industry. What we are starting to notice, and I don't think it's by design. I think it's just more that it feels right. But we are starting to see a lot of buyers doing the upsize move. And this is selling in a price range that's really moving, 8 to 900,000, and moving to the next phase. And that often would be something substantially different because they're moving to upsize. It is usually a home above $1 million. It's usually much larger in square footage. And they're moving from a smaller segment, a smaller house at 8 to 900,000 and moving up at this larger segment of over $1 million. They're moving from a segment that is quick and turning over quickly and in demand to a segment over $1 million that has been struggling historically. And so they benefit from it in being able to sell their house pretty quick and for a competitive price on the sale, and buying and being able to negotiate more on a higher price listing. Just because there are less buyers there and the market there is a little more fragile. It's interesting that we're also starting to see first-time buyers get into the market. And I think that the condo segment or stacked townhouse segment offers great opportunity for buyers to get into the market. Is it the best time ever? It might be the best time in years, but will it get even better for them? Maybe. We always say the best time to buy a house is when you're ready, not trying to time the market. But there is value to be had, especially if you're savvy with your negotiations, to get into a condo or stacked townhouse at a discounted price these days, because there is an oversaturation of those in the market. And I think it's going to get worse as a lot of these developments that are currently in the works being built come to completion. We've seen it on a number of developments where buyers bought in pre-construction and are trying to now sell off, either because it's taking too long to come to completion or the price they bought it at originally, they didn't foresee that there were going to be a lot more developments like that. And now we have an oversupply of a certain segment. So if you are a first-time buyer, you're considering buying in Guelph, lots of deals to be had. Give us a call if you want to get an idea of what's out there, but lots of deals to be had in around the east side of Guelph and the south side of Guelph right now. As always, if you have any questions on the Guelph real estate market, feel free to give us a call. You can find our information on our website at bethandryan.ca, where you can also book an appointment or send us an email. Talk to you later.